So I look around the room here, and I don't see anybody with a mohawk. I don't see anybody wearing a biker jacket. I don't see anybody with a sort of flock of seagulls hairstyle. Um, but I wanted to ask you, when you were younger, um, what would surprise some of us here to know that you were in terms of a style or a clique or something? Will someone please help my speech be amazing and tell me? How about you? What's your name, sir?
Chris.
Chris.
It's hard to believe today, but I once had long, flowing hair.
Long flowing hair. And how would you describe your style?
I lived in the country, but I thought I was a Hollywood rock star, so Bobby Drew,
Okay.
Twisted Sister.
All right. A rocker. Awesome. Anybody else willing to disclose for us style that they used to have? Yes. What's your name? Joanne. New wave meets goth. Okay, I can't even think of how to mix that up. What's is it? Before talking about developing a brand identity and doing it in a way that's different and collaborative, I want to talk about actually developing a human identity. And what's really key to understand is that, like most, we don't. I look around the room here and I don't see any tomboys and I don't see any goths and I don't see any rockers. So what happened? And what essentially happened is that we grow as people, and when we're young, if we're healthy and well adjusted, then we will experiment with different ways of being. From when we're little children playing dress up, to when we're in high school and dressing, like a goth or a rocker, or whatever. But at a certain age, in your 20s or your 30s, your identity, who you are, sort of starts to solidify. So you go through this period of high exploration, but at a certain point, you actually commit to sort of a style of being. And that doesn't mean that you don't change as a person, quite the opposite. But that is a sort of, that's what's considered an achieved identity, a normal sort of form of development. Whereas let's take somebody who is raised in a very, very strict religious community, for instance, where their level of exploration is actually very low. So they are not allowed to dress up like a rocker or, be a tomboy, or anything like that. So, their exploration is very low. But what is very high is their commitment, because in this case, they're being forced to commit to a particular way of behaving and obviously dressing as well. So in the world of psychology, that person could be considered to have a conformist identity. Someone who has a high level of exploration but never actually commits, that person could be considered to have multiple identities or fragmented identities. And there are also some people who never explore, and who never really commit. And that is what they call a diffuse identity. So the reason that it's important to understand this is that for a natural, organic, healthy person to evolve and be successful, there really should be this high level of exploration and then this high level of commitment. And this is something that is really, really lacking. It's lacking in my particular niche, which is helping companies figure out who they want to be, what their promise should be, what their personality should be, that sort of thing. And it's even lacking more in the B2B area, which I'll talk about why in a minute. But let me give an example around a client we had. So we had a client that needed branding, B2B client, professional services, legal industry. And they hired a traditional branding firm, one that's quite well known in the city, mid-sized firm. And what happened was, after paying a ton of money, they essentially kind of left that branding company. And the reason is that they said that they always felt like that branding company was trying to sort of fit them into a mold, that branding company had decided who that firm should be, who they needed to be, and it was just trying to squeeze everybody, sell them into being this particular way. And that just didn't jibe with that company. So essentially, there was an example here where, that branding agency was doing a lot of exploration by themselves. They were doing a lot of commitment in their offices, and then they were coming to the client and saying, here's who you should be. When it comes to your own human identity, you would not allow somebody to interview you, go away, come back, and tell you who you should be. But this is really the norm in the world of brand marketing. And it's really the norm in so many professional services today because, we are all experts. We have spent a lot of time, we've invested in ourselves to be great at something. And in many ways, we have a lot more expertise than the client in our niche. So it only makes sense to us, that we should come up with the answer and get them to accept it. But there's real problems with this kind of approach. Because what happens if you shift from humans to brands is that you really end up with, in a really good situation, you have companies that do a high level of exploration, and then they get everybody, all the key stakeholders, to commit, and they come up with a great brand. And that's what I would consider, an authentic brand. This is very, very hard for B2B companies to do. And it's very easy for B2C companies to do. If you work for a Procter & Gamble, like that whole company basically makes its revenue purely from its brands, you could say in some senses. Like they sell me, a razor blade, a pack of them costs $25. And what did it cost to make them? Pennies. So I've just paid $20 for a brand and for that company's ability to monopolize the marketplace and for that company's ability to kind of be in my face everywhere. So since they make all their money from their brand, they've just got tons of people in those organizations with the word brand in their title. The entire organization, the B2C organization, is really just primed to be all about exploring every single possibility for what a brand could be, and then using every form of research and the like to commit to the best ideas. But that's because they can afford to. Their brand is really the value that they're bringing to the market. We all know that in B2B it's different. We've got someone who's selling a professional service and they're selling their time by the hour. Or someone is selling, a kind of software to another sort of business, and the sales cycles tend to be longer. It's not like being at the drugstore and choosing the $25 razor blade, or the $28 razor blade. So B2B has got a lot more challenge, and that's why you don't have a lot of people, or any people hardly, with the term brand in their titles in B2B companies. So what we see tends to happen in the B2B organizations is that we either will have an organization that's super creative. How many of you have got clients like that in which, you go in and it's like everybody's got an idea about what the message should be. That, they all have an idea. Who've got clients like that? Okay, and it's challenging to manage. And there are probably some of you who have clients who have no idea and are looking to you to have all the ideas. So those are organizations, they tend to often be very marketing driven. They have a lot of creative people, but they can't actually commit to the right ideas. And so they end up having fragmented brands. And at the other end of the scale, where there's low exploration, you can have an organization in which there's a leader who just says, this is who we're going to be. And they just lay it on the line. And they have the equivalent of a sort of conformist identity. So I think I made the case that this is particularly true for B2B, in which the sales are longer, what you're selling can be more complicated, and brand alone, your name, your experience, is a part, and an important part, but it's not everything in terms of who you're working with. So what's the answer? How can we find a way, just like successful humans achieve identities, to help clients, organizations achieve successful identities? And that by identity, I'm meaning any kind of key marketing message. In our case, it's brand promises, positions, and personalities. But it could be around their content. It could be around any number of things. It could be an idea for a campaign. How do we get those ideas out there? Well, the first thing you need to do, and this is what we've done with our firm, is you need to transform yourself from just being a subject matter expert to getting good at facilitating exploration and commitment. You need to be able to use your expertise because you still have that subject matter expertise. I'm not saying to throw it out the door. You need to use it to take it out of your head and use it to create some methods, even some technologies to help you move clients through a process. And you need to make speed a key driver because that's just everything I hear from everyone I talk to in the marketing industry these days is that speed is everything. Everything needs to be faster. And there's probably someone saying this 40 years ago and 50 years ago, but speed is a constant driver and it's very important. And then you need to develop models and deliverables. So whether it's your model of how you deliver a campaign or how you deliver a social media presence, whatever it is, you need to take that out of your head and distill it and make it simple for people that you're working with to understand it and to deliver it. And you also need to define quality in terms of best practices. The way that most professional service people work is that they define the quality, they present it to the customer has to trust them. So it's really great if we can find models in which we educate the customers beforehand. Here's the work we're going to do, and here's how we're going to judge it together. And then the other thing is if you are going to go ahead and try and become more collaborative, try and embrace, I think as Mike was showing, this whole new way of organizations being, you can't experiment on your clients. This is something that professional service people do all the time. You know, you have a client, you have a new idea, you try it out because the risk is low. But really, if you're going to become more about collaboration, more about commitment, you need to make sure you test your ideas out on your friends or find some pro bono work and say, look, I'm experimenting on some new ideas. You know, I'd like to put you through this. And then very important is also to qualify and trust your collaborators. So I think, you know, in Mike's presentation, some of those lists he showed about what makes for success for a wiki brand had a lot to do with having a spirit of collaboration and openness, having people that are seeking transparency and authenticity. So, and also I saw a tweet from the CEO of ING Direct just when I was coming in, and it was something to the effect of, you can't be collaborative if you don't want to collaborate. So in other words, you know, if you have clients that just worship you because you are the expert who comes down from the heavens and delivers your verdict on what they should do, well, they're looking for that. But if you have clients who you think are actually frustrated because they feel like they're being left out of the process, you know, then you need to make sure they're capable of working in this kind of a way. So you need to find ways to make sure that they want to collaborate before you try and facilitate their collaboration. So I'd like to show you a 2-minute video about how we've, as a firm, adopted some of these principles. And then I could go through them one more time, and I'd love to answer some questions, because I'm sure there are many of you who, if you're like me, have a rich history of working with clients and have a desire to be more collaborative. You maybe have a desire to take your expert thinking and turn it into an expert process to add value to your business and to your work. So I'll just show you this video for a sec. But you can basically see that our key premise is that anybody can create a brand. And for us, what's really key is it's all about creating the environment for that. So you need to think about not just delivering your expertise, but where you're going to deliver it. So if you're delivering it in the client's office, then how are you going to do it? And you need to think about the people as well. You know, can you get people to switch from an expert mode of thinking, I'm the only one with the ideas, you aren't creative, to thinking, hey, anybody can be creative. And then can you turn that into a process? Whether it involves a lot of technologies like ours, or it just involves even Post-it notes or a Google spreadsheet. Can you do that so that people can then get their own ideas out? Because it's very important that as part of a process here is that people feel like their ideas matter. Here you can see in our workshop, we have people exploring ideas using iPads and our technology. They look at them, they're able to commit to them, they collaborate, they come up with the best ideas. And ultimately, you can see we have a lot of technology we've developed to do, probably 3 or 4 days of branding work in one day. But for you, in terms of the work that you're doing, what really matters most is just that you're on a path using Post-it notes or whatever to get you there. And so, again, it's key that here you can see sort of a measure of quality. And it's also key that people have that sense of, okay, what are we striving for? So that's kind of the without sound version of our video. And I'll talk a little bit more again about how we've adopted these ideas, and then would love to hear from you about your thoughts on transforming your work. So in our sense, what we've done is transform ourselves from subject matter experts into expert facilitators. For me, it used to always be a sort of about ego, about meeting with clients. They expected me to have the answers, coming in, being the expert, laying it on the line, and then, praying that they're going to accept. And if they don't accept, then finding a way to use charisma, or whatever it takes to get them to learn that this is the right idea. But here the idea really is that what you need to do, step 2, is take your knowledge and turn it into best practices. So what you're selling isn't your expertise. You're saying, look, I have the best practices to do a social media campaign. Here's what we have to achieve together. And I'm going to put forward ideas. You're going to put forward ideas. Let's assess them against these best practices and see where we get. So it's a much better form of decision making. And then having distilled models and deliverables. So for instance, most branding companies deliver at the end of their project a 50-page report on who you are. Well, it just goes to the bottom of a bin someplace or a filing cabinet or a hard drive. What we did was we took it down to 20 pages and then 12 pages. And then about a year ago, I said, why can't this be 1 page? I mean, if it's 1 page, I think people actually read it. And so we turned it into a 1 page, and no one's ever complained. Making speed a key driver is really key. And it's not just because that's what business is like, but if you're going to work with people collaboratively, one of the key problems is disengagement. If something takes too long, anything takes too long in a relationship, in life, you become disengaged, which you can't afford if you're being paid to engage with people. So making speed a key driver is key. And then how you define quality is really key, because like in our case, quality used to just be defined as, do I have a great brand promise? Do I have a great brand position? What we're trying to do is redefine quality by saying the most important thing is that you have these data points and that there's commitment to them. It's the commitment that is the key piece of the quality. If you can have the best ideas, but you can come up with a social media campaign concept and you can start to put it, but if no one is contributing to it, it's a failure. So again, in terms of the work that you do, sometimes it's helpful to redefine quality, not to neglect quality, quite the opposite, but to redefine quality in a way that works for you and with your new method. And finally, trusting your collaborators. That's key. It's difficult for me when I'm in a workshop with a dozen strangers who are going to come out with a brand at the end of the day. And, one of them's an intern, who's like fresh out of school, to say, wow, could this person come up with a great new brand idea? But in fact, they can. And as experts, this is one of the most important lessons we have to learn, which is to value our clients and to know that anybody can be creative. So when it comes to thinking about your marketing, when it comes to thinking about your practice, you see trends, and I think Mike showed perfectly that there is a incredible transformation in the way that work is getting done, and it is getting done in a way that is collaborative. And we don't want to get left behind. So these are some concepts for you to transform your work, for you to think about delivering B2B services in a different way. And ultimately, bringing it all back to exploration and commitment. If our clients come up with a brand that they've explored and they have a great amount of commitment, well, then they truly can live that brand. And, it's not a cop-out when I say I think it's more important that you come up with a a B plus brand, an A plus commitment, than an A plus brand and, C, D, or E commitment. Because if you commit to that brand, to that idea, if you come up with a B plus social media campaign, but everyone is committed to it, then they're committed to it and they're going to help to make it A plus. It's not going to work the other way around.